Good morning. Kent Bain with Nine Business Group and Elevate Your Business Spotlight interview. We have Stephen Longer with us today. Stephen is with Well by Design. Stephen, please introduce yourself. Most importantly, what you do, what makes you different, what sets you apart from the competition. Welcome.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Kent. I appreciate the opportunity. I run a company called Well by Design. Our focus is on helping teams to build and create those conditions for healthy workplace cultures. I do that through speaking engagements at conferences, as well as doing workshops for teams directly, leadership development, and then actually diving in with companies and helping to build strategies to move them forward in terms of building a healthy workplace culture. I think that's what sets me apart, to be fair. I've been in the front lines. I've had the opportunity to work in an organization. I've had leadership roles, executive roles as well. But I've also experienced burnout. I've also experienced the anxiety, the stress, the challenges of working in toxic workplace cultures. And so for me, having the education in the background, but also having lived it out, I have some really tangible things of how to move a company forward that supplement the education that I've had along the way.
So sticking with that theme a little bit about workplace culture, what do you see? Like, how would you describe? Because some people I find end up in a workplace culture, but it just is. They don't know the difference. So maybe let's start the conversation around if you're experiencing blah, 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 you might be in a bad workplace culture. Or if you're experiencing the following, you're probably in a positive workplace culture. Because some people end up with a company for 10 or 15 years. I met with a guy yesterday. He goes, I didn't know it was crappy, right? It was just sort of is what it is. So can you kind of identify those two things I might be experiencing the following if I'm in?
Yeah, 100%. And honestly, a lot of people tend to stay in an organization because, the devil you know is better than the devil you don't. And so, maybe it'll get better, or maybe, it's not so bad. And yet in reality, if you're looking at a situation where you have compliance, we've all been in those kind of situations where you don't feel comfortable challenging somebody's ideas. Do it in a healthy way, obviously. But when you're not feeling like you can actually challenge the status quo, put forward a new idea that might be different than the one of the leadership, where you feel like you don't have an opportunity to have any autonomy in those situations. You're looking for agency, the ability to have a role, know what it is, and be able to have some control of it. And if you don't have that, that's an automatic sign you're in a toxic workplace culture. Similarly, you're looking at those things like those day-to-day conversations where you're looking at those little stressors, people not going the extra mile to help you, people looking at status as opposed to just everybody taking on a role, supporting each other, and doing as you can. Now, when you're looking at a healthy workplace culture, you're looking at the idea that people are more important than product, right? We all know that we need to make money, right? That's at the end of the day, that's what the company's there for. It is work and it's going to be challenging. But the reality is that you're not going anywhere without the people that you have alongside. And so if the work is always put before the people, and the people are, utilized to the nth degree and burning out and full of anxiety and stress, that's another sign that you're not in a healthy workplace culture.
Okay. Now, can an unhealthy or healthy workplace culture be created by an individual? Now, 78% of my clients are 5 or 10 employees or less. So I guess the question I have is, can you, in a large organization of say 50 to 75 people, is it possible that a single manager creates a bad environment outside of maybe what the entrepreneur, the founder wanted? And what would that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people are watching, and every action or inaction creates a situation that people are aware of. So you imagine you have an employee who is not meeting the standard, they're not doing good work, or they're acting in a way that's not appropriate in the office place. A lot of times a leader may not want to create conflict, and so they sweep that under the rug and hope it's going to go away. But by not dealing with that situation, everybody sees that you're not dealing with that situation, and now that's acceptable. And so a leader by inaction can automatically change the culture in that situation. Similarly, if a leader acts and says, no, this is who we are, this is how we stand, this is our value system, and that's not acceptable, but does it in a respectful way, they immediately get people behind them on that situation.
All right, so let's go the other way now. Given that a good chunk of my audience are entrepreneurs, people with 20 to 50 employees, what does it look like for an entrepreneur, a founder, to look at his team and start to see what is that entrepreneur looking for to identify that maybe they have a bad person, a bad seed, an ineffective leader who's creating a poor environment?
I think at the end of the day, it's not about a bad seed or a bad person, or someone who's creating a bad environment, so much as a misfit or a misalignment in terms of their role, their capacity, and what they're doing. A lot of times as a leader, if you're seeing someone that's not performing to your standard, like you hired them for a reason. You hired that person to join your team because you saw something in them. If they're not acting at that point, something's missing. It could be in the workspace. Maybe they're not being challenged. Maybe they're actually being challenged too hard and they're put into a role that they weren't designed to be in. And now they're doing their best, but it's just not working. And so there could be stress, there could be anxiety there, trying to do the best that they can. It may have absolutely nothing to do with your workspace. It may have something to do with what's going on at home or the challenges that they're experiencing in another situation. As a leader, if you're noticing someone is misaligned with your value system, is causing things to shift in a way that's not to your values, I mean, it's incumbent on you to really have that conversation and dig deep to find out. It shouldn't get to that point. As a leader, you should really know your team beyond that.
That is a great clarification. So it really comes down to not a person, but their actions, check. And their actions, if they're an employee, team member's actions are deviating from the values and the direction of the company, that's kind of where the owner needs to step in and kind of go, Bob, Susie, whoever, what's going on? Because this is not like you, or this is not taking us in alignment with what we're going. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I had a company that I worked with that they had an idea. It was called the rule of the second seat. So if you're going to hire somebody, you obviously saw them for a reason that you wanted to hire them. So you put them in a role and you support them and you do the best you can, but you notice that it's not going well for whatever reason as you've laid out. So maybe you need to have a conversation with them and say, okay, this is not working. Let's try this and give you a second opportunity in a different role. Or maybe we'll re-clarify and take some of the things off your plate and build a better support team around you and continue to try. Now, if you've given the second seat and it's still not working, now things have changed, we're misaligned, and you do need to have necessary endings, right? And as a leader, as I said before, that inaction can absolutely cripple your organization, because if the rest of your staff see that you're willing to allow someone to act against your core values, then what's the value there for in the first place? So rule of the second seat, give them a second opportunity, support them, but at the end of the day, there has to be a necessary ending there if you want to continue moving forward.
Love it. I love that. That's a great rule of thumb to have. Talk to us a little about optimal performance. How do we help our team members in an ever-changing world? Lots of external stresses. We have an economic environment that is noisy right now. We have spouses and kids and complicated family situations with mom and dad moving home and all kinds of fun stuff. Teenagers living with us, 25-year-olds living with us. How do we help our team members navigate that, support them, and help create an environment of optimal performance, as you said?
Yeah, I think I really want to stress the idea of optimal performance. You hear a lot about peak performance and empowering people to build their capacity, and all of that speaks to me as pushing people beyond their limits and trying to get them to go further and further and above and beyond and all this language. And to me, that's not sustainable. What we're looking for is optimal performance, where they're working at their absolute best, but they also have some energy to go home and live their life in a way that is sustainable for themselves. I always say that your family deserves the best of you, not just the rest of you, right? And so you should be able to do a good day of work and go home and enjoy your loved ones as well. That being said, you hit it on the head. One thing that I say again and again is I don't think work-life balance exists. With all of those things that you just listed, I think when you're trying to create a situation of work-life balance, you're setting yourself up for frustration and resentment, because you're saying, oh, I worked harder this week. Now I'm owed time. It wasn't balanced. I need to try and get it back in and I need to try and work it back and forth. So to me, work-life balance doesn't exist. To me, a different way to look at it is work-life coherence. And that's what I really work towards, is this idea that there's actually a synergy between your work and your home life. They're not in conflict. It's not an even up situation. It's actually, in one situation, you may have to give more to your work. So your work sphere starts to get a little bit bigger. But in that situation, your home sphere needs to get a little bit smaller. You can't push at both ends. Otherwise, it's going to impact your health. If you're at home and you need to start taking care of, a family member because they're ill, or, parents because they're aging, well, you might have to pull back at work a little bit, right? Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to burn out and you're going to be ill. In order for that to work, you have to be able to communicate with the people that are important in both of those spheres. Otherwise, you get that misconception and miscommunication, right? If I tell my boss at work, hey, when I leave early, I'm not ducking out and not committed. I'm taking my mother-in-law to an appointment. And so I'm doing the best I can. I'll connect later, right? That creates the conditions for that synergy.
You know, just how I was very blessed in many years in my young career and as a professional. I had great employers, great managers. And I sort of always assumed that those always existed. So I'm dying to know if there were, say, companies with 50 employees or more, and there was 100 of them, what percent do you think have a below average workplace culture? Half, three quarters, 10%? What's been your experiences to kind of what's out there in the marketplace? Because maybe it's a bigger problem than I'm aware of.
I'll go two directions again on this one. For starters, I think that what I think may be an unhealthy culture in a situation, somebody else may totally thrive in that situation. Right? Like, we're all unique, and we all experience work in a different way and find balance and connection in a different way. And so I need to be careful in saying whether or not there are healthy and unhealthy and percentages and such. But when we look around, there was a statistic from Benefits Canada in 2023, so very, very recent. And it showed in that survey that 35% of the workforce is currently burnt out. Like, that's a staggering number, 1 in 3. And that's in every work sector that they surveyed. So that's your first responders, your teachers, the person sitting beside you in your seat, the staff that are working for you as an entrepreneur. 1 in 3. Now, when they're doing that, they're not able to work at their optimal performance, right? And not only that, when you have people that are burnt out and taking time away from work, it's hard on them, but it's incredibly hard on the people who are there, because now they're asked to pick up the pieces and now they're pushing beyond it. And so it's almost just like a vicious circle where it continues to build. So when you're talking about an unhealthy or toxic workplace, sometimes it's not even that. It's just that we need to shift a few things to create the conditions for people to be able to be at their optimal level, right?
Okay, so fun question then. What is the difference between, I want to go back to something you said earlier. So sometimes it's not a bad workplace, but a bad fit. So if 35% of us are burnt out, what percent is of you say, so 35% burnt out? What portion of that would you say is a result of probably just wrong person, wrong place, wrong seat versus a crappy work environment being created by a boss in a place where there's too much demands and a conflicting employment situation? Half and half?
You're really trying to get a number, which is cool, but I won't give it to you. To me, again, like, I've never met a person that wakes up in the morning and is like, all right, I'm the leader of this company. My job is to go in and make it as difficult on people as I possibly can. I want to crush my team. I want to defeat them. I want them begging for mercy. You never see that. People are trying their best, right? And everybody's trying to run a company the way that they see fit. People are trying to come to work and give the best that they can. Sometimes the best that they can just isn't good enough, right? And so that's why I'm here, right? Sometimes the work that I do at a deep level with companies, it is amazing how many times the simplest little thing makes a huge impact. Here's an example. So I had a company I was working with, and the leader said, well, we don't start the day till 8:30. So I don't start any of my meetings till 8:30. And that was the biggest problem with the staff. When you start the meeting at 8:30, now I don't get to show up at 8:30. I have to show up at 8 o'clock, which means that I have to get up earlier. I have to take my kids earlier to daycare. They're stressed. I'm anxious getting in. I spilled my coffee on my way in. And now it's like a terrible start to the day. So start your meeting at 9:30, man. Right. And now when you start your meeting at 9:30, do your own work for the first hour. Your staff can come in, they can get ready, they can review the content and be ready to go. Right. Simple shift, right? But made a huge difference for a company. That's not a cult like a toxic workplace. That's just a miscommunication along the way.
Oh, that's great insight. That's beautiful. That's a wonderful lesson. So let's go for one more. And I'm not
Okay.
going to ask you for a number this time. I'm going to go.
And now I'm going to give you a
You've been
number.
at this, you've been in the space a long time, very self-aware, also been teaching this directly for a couple, 3 years now. What is the greatest lesson that you've learned that you would like to go back and impact on your younger self when you went into business the first time? Kind of what you've been at it 2 or 3 years. What is one thing you learned you want to go back and tell young Steve and kind of go, do this sooner?
100%. Nobody thinks it'll happen to them until it does, right? We all think we're invincible. We all think that we're able to just push through, myself included. There were times where I was doing my master's while I was running a leadership program, while I was doing mentorship programs, young kids. My wife was working at the same time. I got this, is what it would always say. I got this. No problem. Just keep pushing through. And you can do that for a while, right? And we've all had to be in that situation where you can push through for a while. But we all need to create a situation for ourselves where there is room for crisis tension to enter or challenges to enter. Because if we push ourselves beyond our capacity in the first place, then when that crisis hits, we're so done, right? And mine happened during COVID. Just briefly, I'll give it to you. We were, the COVID crisis, how nobody was allowed into your home over the holidays or whatever. 5 and a 3-year-old took our family skating. My wife fell and broke both her wrists. Right now,
Oh,
imagine. So I'm pushing, right? I'm in an executive role. I'm young, we're doing all these things, we're working from home. My wife's doing schooling. Kids are doing schooling from home. Now my wife broke both of her wrists, and I got to pick up all those pieces and help around the house. And that was fine, right? I got this, is what I kept saying to myself. Right. 3 weeks later, I'm on a hospital bed. I thought it was an ulcer. It was my appendix. It was beyond septic to necrotic. I was rushed to the hospital for an emergency surgery. So now I'm in the hospital for 6 days. My wife's got, 2 hands that don't work anymore. We've got a 5 and a 3-year-old. They're trying so hard to help. They empty the dishwasher. We were finding dishes in the pantry, like they were doing everything they could. But the reality is that, like, I would go back and say to myself, you don't always got this. You need to create the conditions for crisis to enter and still be okay.
love it. That's great insight. I appreciate it. Thank you for your time. The last and most important question is, who should find you? Who's that ideal client that you're looking for? And where can they find you to learn more about how to work with you?
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, I love speaking at conferences as a keynote or a breakout presenter. Love doing workshops with teams. If your company is, a lot of teams don't want to uncover that, turn over the rock and find out. They assume things are going well. Let's find out. Dive in. Let me come and work with your team. I'll shed some new insight on how to build a healthy workplace culture. Make sure your team's thriving. I work with teams as small as 5 up to 500. No problem. So there's definitely a range. Best way to find me, wellbydesign.ca is my website, and you can find me on LinkedIn at Stephen Lang.
Love it. Thank you very much, Steve. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. Good work, and we'll talk to you real soon.
Thanks, Kent. Appreciate the opportunity. Take care.
You're welcome.